Welcome to the Skeptic Zone, the podcast from Australia for science and reason.
Hello and welcome to the Skeptic Zone, episode number 241 for the 2nd of June 2013. Richard Saunders here with you from Sydney, Australia, right off the road, as it were, from my trip and talk I gave in Canberra, in the Australian Capital Territory. Thank you to all those people who came along to the lecture theatre there, the CSIRO Discovery Centre, to hear my talk, Adventures of an Australian Paranormal Investigator. What a great time I had, and thank you to those people who came back with me to King O'Malley's bar for a quick beer and a chat. In fact, coming up on the Skeptic Zone this week to kick off the show, I chat to Andrew Gould from the Canberra Skeptics and my good friend Amanda Devaus. We chat about the upcoming convention, Australian Skeptics Convention, which will be held in Canberra in November this year. Also, we talk about the upcoming TAM, the amazing meeting in Las Vegas. We discover that Andrew used to read tarot cards, and we hear about a new podcast coming up. That's all in the first part of the show. Following that, it's a week in science with our good friends from the Royal Institution of Australia, www.riaus.org.au. And to round off the show, it's the Think Tank, the good old Think Tank, back at our favourite club down the end of the streets, bus announcements and everything. I'm joined by Dr. Rachie, Joanne Benhamu, and Eran Segev. Well, there's not much more to say, really. I think we'll get stuck straight into the show. Well, before we do, something I haven't done for a while on the Skeptic Zone. I've got my handy gamer's dice here, 20-sided, a D20. I'm going to roll it now. Let's use your psychic powers. Who can predict what the number will be? Are you ready? Think of a number now. It's either going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, all the way up to 20. Are you ready? Have you got your number? Here we go. Oh, it fell off the table. Here we go again. 11. Congratulations to all those people who got 11. One more roll at the end of the show. But enough silliness. I'm going to run downstairs, have some lovely peanuts in the shell, just the way I like them. While I'm doing that, we can all enjoy the Skeptic Zone. I'm having a nice, quiet drink here in the King O'Malley's pub. I've just given a talk to the Canberra Skeptics and people who came along, which was really great. I'm sitting here with Andrew. Andrew, you've got some interesting information for the Skeptic Zone listeners about the upcoming convention.
The National Skeptics Convention is going to be held in Canberra this year from the 22nd to the 24th of November at the CSIRO Discovery Lecture Theatre. We're going to have fringe events, we're going to have guest speakers. Richard, you're going to be presenting a talk. Chris French is coming out from the UK.
Wow, that's great, yeah.
Anomalistic psychologist from there. Gary Backer, Craig Cormick, Rachel Dunlop, Mike McRae, Nick Ware, Chrissy Wilson. All sorts of people are coming out. Peter Bowditch, Tristan Swale is the crop circle expert from the UK, is going to be Skyping to us. It's going to be great.
Well, Australian Skeptics Conventions, and I speak from long experience. My first one was 1999. Oh, boy. And I've been to just about everyone since then. I love the conventions. There's such an informal atmosphere. And I well remember the last one in Canberra. I think it was 2003. If I'm not mistaken.
That was before I started getting into the skeptical community.
Oh, you were only in kindergarten then, I'm sure.
I'm not that young. Thank you, but no, I'm not that young.
And that was, I enjoyed that one very much, and I always look forward to skeptical conventions. Apart from anything else, it's a great way to meet other like-minded people, isn't it?
It is, yes. That's what I've found most about going to these conventions. I went to a TAM in Las Vegas a few years ago,
and I went to
TAM Australia in 2010.
Yep.
And the thing that I took away most from those, I mean, there were great talks, there were great events that were being held, but the thing I took away most was socialising with other skeptics, having a drink in the Del Mar Lounge or at the pub in Sydney, and we're hoping to have as many fringe events as we can here. We're thinking of doing British anomalistic psychologists in the pub.
I'll be there. That sounds too good to miss.
That's going to be great. We're doing CSIRO Discovery Centre has this regular event that they call Discovery After Dark, where they have science demonstrations and all sorts of things. It's great fun. We're going to take over one of those, and we're going to have skeptical presentations and people doing stuff. It's going to be fantastic. There's going to be great people, great information, and we hope everybody can come.
And the theme this year is conspiracy theories, because it's the 50th
anniversary of the assassination of John F. Kennedy, the first and greatest well-known successful false flag event in US history, where the CIA assassinated John F. Kennedy and then tried to cover it up. We're inviting.
I thought it was the KGB. I've been wrong all these years.
You never know. Prove to me that it wasn't.
Yeah.
I mean, we're inviting alien ambassadors, Chinese submarine captains.
Well, that's a reference to another conspiracy theory that some of our international audience may not be aware. We had a Prime Minister of Australia who disappeared.
He went swimming, as was his wont, and vanished.
Late 60s, wasn't it?
1960 something, 67, 68.
Harold Holt.
Harold Holt. And he disappeared off the New South Wales coast and Victorian coast.
Victoria.
Sorry, my mistake.
A long time ago.
It was a long time ago. And, everybody said that he was picked up by a Chinese submarine. Everybody didn't say that, but some people said that he was picked up by a Chinese submarine.
Of course, the official story was, and it's obviously a rouge, that he drowned.
Yeah, I mean, he was,
honestly, who would believe that?
It couldn't possibly be. He was a strong swimmer. He knew the waters.
How old was he?
67. But he was a strong swimmer. He couldn't have possibly have drowned.
What? A strong swimmer? He swam to the submarine.
Exactly.
Yes. Where JFK was there to meet him.
JFK was undoubtedly there. No. JFK was definitely shot, but he was shot by the CIA on the grassy knoll because there were obviously two bullets. There couldn't possibly have been one bullet. The book depository didn't have the right trajectory to go through the body as the reports found.
There's a room full of people agreeing with you. I'm worried now.
Well, I'm just asking questions. I mean, prove me wrong.
Oh my God.
This is the sort of thing, folks, you can expect to get when you come to Canberra in November for the Australian Skeptics National Convention. What's the website we should run to?
The website is nationalskeptics&nbsp.org. That's all one word, skeptics spelt with a K.
What a great URL. Wow, how did you get that?
Quite easily, actually. We also have the Canberra Skeptics on Facebook. But anyway, any information that we have on the National Skeptics Convention goes on to that nationalskepticsconvention.org website. It also auto-posts to both our Facebook group and our Twitter feed.
Now, we must stress that this year's seats are limited. And I'm not kidding. Normally you say, quick, seats are limited, but in this case they really are.
Seats definitely are very limited. It's going to be a very exclusive event.
I can't wait. I love doing the skeptical conventions. For me, it's like recharging my batteries, meeting people, having a good time and learning. I always learn something at skeptics conventions wherever I go. And somebody who will be at the next amazing meeting in Las Vegas is Amanda. Hello, Amanda.
Hi there.
Your first TAM coming up.
My first TAM. I'm very excited.
What do you expect? I mean, what have you heard about TAM in Las Vegas?
Lots of good company and good beer, mainly.
You've got your priorities right, I see.
Great workshops by a lot of really great people who I respect and admired from afar for many years, and catching up with people that I've talked to for a long time.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, because you make all these friends on social media over the years, especially in skeptical circles. Mm-hmm. And when you go to somewhere like the amazing meeting in Las Vegas, suddenly you're sitting at a table with them having a drink. It's really great.
It is great, and I think I've mentioned it before, it feels like, you've known them, they're close friends, even though you haven't really seen each other.
Yeah.
But you finally get a chance to get together, and the talk always goes a bit weird and goes a bit sceptical, so it's all good. But to be honest, I'm not entirely sure what to expect, but I'm very excited.
It's hard to explain the amazing meeting to somebody who hasn't been there, partly because of the venue. Because the venue is the South Point Casino, which is like a little city. It's a giant building which never ends, with restaurants everywhere. In fact, people go into Tam on the Monday or Tuesday before and they don't leave for a week.
Yes, I've seen that, and also air conditioned, which I think is going to be very handy for that time of the year. But I've done some research on the hotel itself, and I'm very excited. So we'll see what happens.
Oh, it's great fun. Well, Amanda, I can't wait to see you at the amazing meeting. I'll certainly give you the big tour, because the South Point is quite a big building, and there are funny restaurants hidden here and there are lots of lounges and all sorts of things going on. But I think you'll really enjoy it. And there's a giant statue of a man on a horse.
Well, you can't ask for more than that, can you?
You can't ask for more than that.
I'm looking forward to it. Thank you, Richard.
Now, something's very interesting, that you used to be, in fact, a tarot card reader.
Yeah, I never took money for it. I want to say that right up front.
We're all relieved. It's okay.
But yes, I went through an evangelical Christian phase, and then I left that and went through a neo-pagan phase.
We've all been there, haven't we?
I think so. But during my neo-pagan phase, I used to read tarot cards, I used to read runes, I used to do rituals, spells, all sorts of things. The interesting thing about tarot cards, and why I continue to keep my hand in a little, as it were, is that on the tarot cards, each card has a picture on it which shows a scene. So you can,
like people on horseback, or people
on horseback, people carrying swords, people getting chests full of money, things like that. So you can take a whole lot of these cards, line them up, and they tell a story. And once you line them up and you start telling that story to the person you're reading to, they undoubtedly will then start to relate elements in that story to their own lives. So you have you have a scene with a mother figure, and then you have a scene with running water.
I was just about to say a stream. Yeah,
stream. Yeah. That's very good, Richard.
Yeah. See?
Oh my God,
it's all true. Yeah. I love the term that you used, mother figure. And this is something readers use all the time. They'll say a mother figure or a father figure.
That's right.
Which means anything.
Exactly. You know? A mother figure could be a mother, it could be a grandmother, it could be an aunt, it could be a teacher, it could be just about anyone. But the point is that the tarot cards, and this is what makes it so fascinating to me, the tarot cards just have this basic symbolism drawn on the card.
It's almost like a prompt.
It is. That's exactly what it is. It's a prompt. It's a prime, and it's something that the querent, which is the jargon word for the people receiving the reading, it's something that the querent can relate to something in their own lives.
Or parts of it, at least.
Or parts
something,
of it. Yeah. So you were talking in your talk today about cold reading, and most of your listeners will know at least something about cold reading. The tarot is a shortcut, if you like, to cold reading, because you can say, here's the 9 of swords. This is a person carrying 9 swords. He's obviously overreacting to some kind of threat.
He's good.
And they say, oh my God, I'm having trouble at work. My boss seems out to get me
with 9 swords.
You know, it's easy. It makes it so easy to get into somebody's psychology. And I think...
What about the 4 of Cups?
4 of Cups, I've got to have to remember now out of memory. The 4 of Cups is 1 cup full, 3 cups empty, which means you've lost a lot but you still retain some. See, it's so easy to relate these scenes on the cards to aspects of one's own life. And that's why tarot card readers in particular, I think, are able to convince people that they have these powers to to describe things that I never told you that I had lost all of this, and I never told you that my house was robbed, but I kept my mother's locket.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
I have a question for you though, Andrew. During this time when you did this, did you believe that you were able to do this, or did you know that it was all bunk?
That's a very good question, and I'm not sure that has a yes or no answer. I think that at the time I felt that the cards were tapping into something. I didn't know what it was. I didn't know whether I was able to read somebody's mind, or whether I was able to ask spirits for their advice, or I don't quite know, and I don't think I really knew then, or I knew then that it worked. I didn't know why it worked. It's only much, much later, when I started learning about cold reading and things like that I finally figured out why it worked.
I think you would do a really good live demonstration for an audience. You'd have somebody come up, you'd have the table, would have a camera on the cards. I think that would be great. I think you should something you should consider.
That's a very interesting idea, Richard.
I'm really putting him on the spot.
I'm starting a new podcast. My co-host from Rational Capital, Mike, and I are about to start a new podcast, and we want input from people. The podcast is called Explain That.
Oh, explain that. I like that.
And we aim to seek natural and rational explanations for apparently paranormal phenomena.
I like the sound. When are you going to kick this one off?
I don't know when we're going to kick this off yet. We're in planning stage.
Let us know at the Skeptic Zone, and we'll give it a good plug. Yeah.
We will, yes. What I'm asking for at the moment is that if anybody has had some kind of experience that could be described as a paranormal experience, maybe a haunting or a abduction, or
it happened to me. It happened to me when I walked into this room. This class was full. Look at it now. How do you explain that?
That is rather easy to explain, actually. But what I'm looking for is people to send me their stories.
Right. Yeah.
Of interesting or strange events that might, because everyone knows that these strange events happen. We all know that weird things happen, and we all in this room, I think, believe that all of these things have natural explanations, even if we don't know what those natural explanations are.
How can people get you this information?
We've got an email address set up. We're only preliminary at the moment,
yep.
But we have an email address which is explainthat@mail.com.
At mail.com?
At mail.com.
Easy to remember.
Nice and easy to remember. So if you send an email into that mail address, we'll have a look at it. And
so you want people to send in their spooky experiences?
Spooky experiences, UFO sightings, ghost hauntings.
With the tagline, well, how do you explain that? That's what they're...
Pretty much. Because what we're after, as I said, is looking for those natural explanations behind these apparently paranormal phenomena.
Awesome. I have a feeling I'll have a spooky experience in about 6 weeks. I'll get back to you.
Right, cool.
Oh, a tan. And to everybody in the room, look, I just literally come off the stage giving a talk to you all, and I want to thank you all for coming along. So cheers.
Cheers.
Yay.
Have you heard the one about how the Illuminati, in conjunction with the US government, are hiding the existence of aliens in order to ensure the supply of helium is kept low? Or that the CIA, the militant wing of the Freemasons, are working with the Elders of Zion to take control of the population of the world through fluoridated chemtrails? Canberra Skeptics Incorporated, on behalf of the Shadow Government, will be massing an array of dark forces for the Australian Skeptics National Convention 2013. This convention has conspired to coincide with the 50th anniversary of the assassination of John F. Kennedy, possibly the most famous conspiracy theory of all time. If you've ever wanted to learn about the truth behind the death of JFK, what makes for a good conspiracy theory and why they are so prevalent, Canberra Skeptics invites you to attend. That is, of course, should you choose to accept it. Come to nationalskepticsconvention.org and just remember, they will be watching you.
Welcome to A Week in Science from RiAus. This week, brain versus body, a new vaccine, and music evolution. First up, 2 studies that show the power of our brains over our bodies. In the first study, participants were given the illusion that their real body had been replaced by a virtual one. The more realistic the simulation, the less sensitive they became to temperature changes on their actual skin, indicating they were melding with their virtual self. In the second study, Dutch researchers have shown that people with anorexia unconsciously move like they have a larger body size, turning their shoulders as they move through doorways, even when there is plenty of space. A new vaccine has been trialled for one of the viruses that cause hand, foot and mouth disease. Hand, foot and mouth disease caused by the EV71 virus has resulted in 2,000 deaths worldwide in the past decade, with the last Australian death in 1999. The vaccine trial involved children in China and reduced the number and severity of cases caused by this virus. However, while it's a great step forward, the researchers warn that the vaccine doesn't protect against other viruses that cause the disease, and so may not drastically reduce the total number of hand, foot and mouth cases. Researchers spend 550 working years writing grants, costing $66 million annually with only a 25% success rate. People with high IQs are better at tuning out distractions, helping them to concentrate in an information-saturated world. A single change in a pigment gene can turn a tiger from orange to white, and a 158-million-year-old bird-like dinosaur, complete with feathers, has helped clarify how dinosaurs evolved into birds. And finally, do you think all of today's music sounds the same? A detailed analysis of Western music spanning from 1730 to 1930 has shown that music really does evolve through time. The patterns found in the melodies studied strongly related to the time period from which the music came. This could help us understand how our brains are wired to perceive music and our tendency to enjoy melodies that fit a familiar and predictable style. RiAus recently commissioned a new play, The Clock, dealing with ageing. Tune in online next week for a special panel discussion about the science of ageing and the challenges of translating this tricky topic into theatre. Live streaming details can be found on our website. And that's been the highlights of another big week in science. For more information and science news, jump onto the RiAus website at riaus.org.au, where you can also sign up for notifications of future episodes. Don't forget, follow A Week in Science on Twitter using the hashtag WeekInSci. I'm Tania Meyer, and on behalf of the RiAus team, see you next week.
Hi, this is Tim Farley. You probably know me from whatstheharm.net, a catalog of the real-world harm caused by lack of critical thinking. But that's not my only project. I present at Skeptic events. I post a daily Skeptic history fact on Twitter and Facebook, and I blog about using new techniques on the internet to advance skepticism. Come over to skeptools.com and check out my latest ideas. But first, enjoy the rest of the Skeptic Zone.
Join us now for Drinking Skeptically in the Think Tank.
I'm waiting.
When my people are being forced against their will to place their children at risk, it is the role of every righteous man or woman to stand up and say, never again.
Really?
Really?
Oh, what about let my people go? She hasn't used that one.
Yeah. She uses that one about first they came for the things and they came and I did nothing. She uses that all the time.
With the distinct smell of Godwin in the air. Yes? A logical fallacy. I welcome you all to the Think Tank. Welcome Eran Segev.
Thank you, Richard. How are you doing?
I'm doing very well. He's one of the people.
I'm one of the people.
Here's another one of the people is Joanne Benhamu. Hello.
Hi, Richard.
Looking lovely with your swirly top there, I must say.
Let's not go there.
Another one of our people.
I'm not one of the people.
But you're one of our people, Dr. Rachie.
Hi. I don't know, you can nom
She's
like
one of the people, but she's not chosen like us.
I see.
Well, you're all chosen.
Like us and Meryl.
Us and Meryl. We're all chosen to be here tonight. Cheers, everybody.
Cheers.
Good to see you back in the Think Tank.
I think Meryl's chosen to be some royal king.
Oh, that's good. Thank you, Joanne Benhamu, for bringing along the lollies.
I am the official provider of
What do we have here? Sour
Fantails.
the natural confection company sour squirms, which are like sour wormy things, and fantails, that good old Australian classic called
They're not
fantails.
really conducive to talking, though, fantails, are they? Because once you've had one in your mouth...
You won't be hearing from me for the next few minutes.
They're very chewy
Similar
indeed.
to minties, they're not conducive to conversation.
Well, it's been a little while since we've been together in the think tank, and what an interesting time it has been lately. Well, that's hard. I mean, it's the tip of the iceberg just to say it's interesting, Dr. Rachie. I've never seen a couple of weeks like we've had, with the concerted effort in the news media, especially against the loons at the Australian Vaccination Network. I mean, honestly, I've just never seen anything like it.
Well, today they were called zealots. Anti-vaccine zealots. I mean, you know, I was saying to you before we started recording tonight that I'm so engrossed in this stuff now that sometimes it sort of washes over me and I forget and I don't notice how bad things are. Because, for them, but also nothing they do surprises me anymore.
Yeah,
so,
we see it all the time. I agree, yeah.
Yeah, so it's nice to get a reality check from other people who haven't come across this stuff before. And I did an interview on Monday for ABC Radio where we were discussing the myths of vaccination. And the presenter was asking me about how much I get harassed because of what I say publicly about vaccines. And I relayed to her the story of Tony McCaffrey and David McCaffrey, and she was gobsmacked.
Yeah.
And she didn't know what to say, and she couldn't believe that sort of stuff happens. And, you know, on Sunday we had front page headlines, and the front page of the newspaper was Tony McCaffrey, and you talked about that last week a little bit. And then Meryl wrote a blog on Monday saying, I'm being attacked on the internet because journalists said bad things about me. It's like, no, you did these things. It was written up in the papers, and she's getting bollocksed by lots of people who are writing nasty emails to her, which I wouldn't condone. But, you know, the thing is, she did all this stuff, and it's really, really bad.
Yeah. No, we must stress, absolutely, we do not condone people writing nasty, nasty things to Meryl Dorey or anybody else. That's not the way we...
No.
We simply do not condone that. Please, people, find a better way to conduct yourselves out there. But on the other hand, of course, as Tony McCaffrey had said, she has been on the receiving end of horrible emails from anti-vaccination zealots.
Yeah, but I mean, I guess it's sort of sometimes hard to reflect on this stuff, and because it's happening so quickly, you also don't get a lot of time to celebrate the wins that you get, because by the time something's happened, then something else happens, you know. I mean, yeah, so on Friday, the amendments to the Public Health Act came through. That's the
New South Wales Parliament.
Yes, so that is now at law in New South Wales. And just to reiterate, that means that the Healthcare Complaints Commission can now instigate complaints about healthcare providers or educators of their own fruition. They don't have to wait for other people to complain.
Do they have anything on their agenda?
We'll get to that in a moment, Eran. And also, importantly, it used to be you could only make a complaint if you'd personally been affected, whereas the legislation now says that if you feel a healthcare provider is likely to cause harm, you can register a complaint, which is really fantastic because in the age of the internet, there's stuff all over the place that can potentially cause harm by people just reading it. They don't have to actually go to a practitioner.
You know how they have they give names to laws. Like in this country, there's a famous law called Sky's Law, which is against hoon drivers, bad drivers.
Well, you know, some people are suggesting, and particularly the legislation now for childcare centres, that it might be called Dana's Law.
I was just going to say.
Oh, even better. Even better.
Yeah.
Take the irony out, even better.
It tends to actually usually be to memorialise the person who has...
I agree. That sounds much better.
So that legislation came through Friday. Today was the third reading in Parliament of the amendment to the Anti-Discrimination Act to allow childcare centres to discriminate against children who aren't vaccinated. In addition to that, the law will include if they do enrol unvaccinated children, they can be fined $4,000. But there's a small problem with this legislation.
There is.
There is indeed.
Joe, do you want to say what that is?
Let us pray.
So there's a rather large loophole in the legislation which basically there's two ways that you can get out of vaccinating. One is if you have a legitimate medical reason why you can't actually be vaccinated.
And you need a
letter from the doctor saying that. And the other way is religious exemption. So just go and make your own church and there you go. And that's exactly pretty much what they're doing. So
they've made their own church.
Well,
is this an existing something?
Well, it is actually an existing church called the Church of Conscious Living, which was created around 2007,
2008, but deliberately to get conscientious objections
with this purpose to basically provide valid conscientious objections.
They just keep shooting themselves in the foot, don't they?
But rather conveniently. Rach, do you want to tell the rest of the story?
Yeah, so I mean, this is what I mean by the fact that you don't get time to celebrate wins before something else happens. So this was it yesterday?
It was yesterday.
So yesterday was the third reading of this potential legislation in Parliament. So at 9:30 in the morning, the AVN posted a post on their Facebook page saying, everyone go off and join the Church of Conscious Living, and then we can all get, exemptions.
Yeah.
Some meddling kids, I don't know who they are.
No, don't know who they are.
They happened to screenshot that and happened to send it to the relevant ministers, including the health minister, the opposition health minister.
It must have been the friends of Scooby-Doo, the meddling kids, right?
Yeah, and they saw this, and I believe also that these people followed up with phone calls after they were emailing this. And so by 5 o'clock in the afternoon, the health minister, Julian Skinner, announced that the Healthcare Complaints Commission will be commencing an investigation into the Australian Vaccination Network for trying to circumvent the new legislation.
You should see their faces, my friends. You should see their faces. They're sitting across from me. Rachel's got a glass of champagne in her hand. Joe is eating some candy, and they're both just smoking away.
How brilliantly, I can't even speak. Like, if you're going to shoot yourself in the foot, that's the way to do it, you know?
Well, don't you
aim right?
Don't you?
We'll be departing in 5 minutes' time. Those wishing to use the service, make your way to the foyer now. Courtesy bus departing in 5 minutes' time. Thank you.
Hooray!
Okay, we have to go.
That's Thank goodness for the bus announcement.
I remember something that you said, Richard, probably about 2 or 3 years ago now. You said that Meryl only... only opens their mouth to change feet. But that's exactly the way it is. It's absolutely. I mean, it's astonishing her ability to cause harm to her own organisation, to her own causes. That's just astonishing.
I think one of the things that's really important, though, is for people have been aware of their presence for a long time, and I think. As we know, the majority of the community do vaccinate. We're not talking about. Yes,
we're not talking about. Yes. 51%.
Shut up, Eran.
We're talking about 92%. Yeah.
Well, depending on the area.
On the and on the
poetic license
by average.
Yeah. Anyhow, so hang on, train of thought. I'm too busy giggling.
I don't blame you.
So as I was saying, the community really is not a fan of Meryl Dorey and the AVN, but. As we know, most people need a bit of a push to actually recognise something going on in the community that is potentially going to cause harm, and they need to be mobilised into action. And I think that for a long time now, there's been a relatively small group of people who have recognised this problem and are shouting to the rooftops about it. But I think that the Telegraph, the Daily Telegraph's campaign, the No Jab, No Play campaign. Has really now mobilised that community interest.
It's been an extraordinary campaign.
I mean, it was quite funny actually. I was out for coffee. When was it? I think it was yesterday. And there was, you have sort of communal tables now in a lot of coffee shops. And there were these two people sitting next to me, looking through the Telegraph. And the woman said to the man, "Oh, they're going to be fining people for not vaccinating their children." And the man said, "Oh, that's a bit extreme." And of course, couldn't help myself. I leaned over and I said, "Look, actually, no, that's not how it's going to work." And I said, this is actually what's going to be happening, and da-da-da-da. And they said, "Oh, that's very good." And she looked over at him and she said, "Do you vaccinate your children?" He said, "Oh, of course, absolutely." And I thought, like, it's just good that this conversation's happening. People are actually interested in it. They're talking about it, and that's what we need.
And in the midst of all this, with the incredible campaign by the Daily Telegraph and the stories coming out for 2 weeks now? Over 2 weeks?
No, this is week 4.
Yeah.
It's been extraordinary. We had, of course...
And also Fairfax has picked it up now. They're on the gravy train too because they saw that the Telegraph was doing so well that they went, let's have a go. So they published a few articles.
Well, one of the aces we have up our sleeve is always to use that clip from Media Watch, where they absolutely rip into somebody because they have the views of the anti-vaxxers.
Personally, I prefer using the clip from The Project.
Who's that?
Well done, Dr. Rachie. But, of course, in the midst of all this, just last weekend we had Jabbed.
Yes.
Jabbed.
And I was going to say, just when, speaking of the conversation, Jabbed, one of the big messages from Jabbed is that one of the biggest issue here is having the conversation. That saying, what was the point that they made in there? That it's one thing to say that you're fearful of vaccinating, but that shouldn't be the end of the conversation.
Yeah, that's just the beginning.
That was a really important message.
It was a wonderful documentary. Now, Rachel and I had a little sneak preview about a week before it went to air, a week or two before it went to air, and I met Sonia Pemberton in the Czech Republic because she was at this science film festival I was at. I was very impressed when I saw it in our sneak peek, Dr. Rachie, and then when it aired again, I rewatched it and thought to myself, thousands of people around Australia are watching this at the moment. It was quite something.
Well, one of the things I thought was, I'm not going to give it away because it will be released in the US later this year.
Yeah,
as Sonia
on
said.
PBS, I think.
Yeah, if people want to hear that interview I did with Sonia, it was 2 weeks ago, I think. 2 or 3 weeks ago.
Yes.
Anyway.
Yeah.
There was something that she said during that interview that I didn't really register with me at the time, but it has subsequently because I expected that the anti-vaxxers would, after I'd seen a preview, I knew that their heads would explode on Sunday. And I knew that they would explode because she covered vaccine reactions, but she covered them in a very sensitive and nuanced way because they're extremely rare.
Yeah.
So whilst the autism was mentioned, there wasn't certainly any cases of that cited in the documentary. And what she did cite was very rare reactions that happened, one of which was an epileptic type, what's it called, syndrome? Dravet syndrome, which is an extremely rare genetic form of epilepsy, which was triggered by the fever generated by the vaccine, but any fever would trigger it.
Right, yes, I remember that.
And then also there was the boy who contracted polio from the live polio vaccine because he didn't have a fully functioning immune system, right? So, but the anti-vaxxers are furious because they didn't have she didn't cover the thousands of brain-injured children across the world that they apparently have.
Yeah.
And it only occurred to me after I saw it again that in that interview with Sonia, I asked her that question. I said, how did you get the reactions to cover in the documentary? And she said that she asked people, she said, send me information about your kids. If they've been vaccine injured, I want to investigate. And she said, I received thousands of reactions that I could not confirm.
Yeah.
I could not. Yes. When I tried to follow them up, I wasn't given phone numbers. I wasn't given contact with the families. I wasn't given the doctors, and I needed to speak to doctors. I needed to see the diagnosis. I needed to confirm it. Out of all these thousands that she read through, none of them could be confirmed.
Yeah.
So here we have...
I remember that. Yeah.
Here we have Meryl Dorey saying she's got a database of thousands of children who are apparently brain damaged and dead from vaccines. They had an opportunity of a lifetime to get to a documentary maker, have her tell their story. Where were they that day? Why weren't they bringing... And the ones that she received, she couldn't confirm because they would simply not respond to her. Now, I think that's very telling.
I think that's right, yeah.
And I think the other thing that's very telling is the cases that were presented on there. The parents of these children, and these children were, have been, severely damaged. They support vaccination.
Yes, isn't that extraordinary?
They recognise that, for example, the little boy who developed this epilepsy, his parents have chosen not to vaccinate him any further because of the fact that he is at risk of having further seizures, which is very dangerous for him. So, as they said, they rely on other people vaccinating. They rely on the community.
As you say, Dr. Rachie, community.
It's not my phrase, by the way. I adopted it, but I think it's
brilliant.
I think it's a great
community
phrase. Yeah. So I just wonder where. And this is when I posted this up somewhere online, people wrote back and said, well, remember when there was the Sunday night program, the original Sunday night program with Tony McCaffrey, and then Meryl Dory wanted to have a debate, and Mike Munro said to her, you said you were going to bring vaccine-injured children to this program, where are they? Didn't show up. No. Apparently there was an Insight edition of a show called Insight, which is a panel show, where she also claimed she could bring hundreds of vaccine-injured children. Never happened. So, because there's been so much publicity, Richard, in the meantime, I've actually been doing some work as well. And one of those things...
No, really?
Yeah, I know, right? I wrote a post about myths of vaccination, which has just gone mental. I'm not quite sure why everyone likes it, but it's been syndicated all over the place.
But this is quite a while ago, wasn't it?
It's still going, though.
But you wrote this for Mamma Mia, wasn't it? Or?
I wrote one for Mamma Mia 2 years ago, and then The Conversation asked me to write another one when I was in Manchester.
You were on the Mamma Mia TV show about, 2-3 years ago?
2 years ago, yeah. So I wrote another one called 6 Myths of Vaccination when I was in Manchester. Anyway, so I was interviewed for that on Monday, and I was very interested and very pleased that when the producer said to me, how do you want me to introduce you? And I said, well, I'm a research fellow at the University of Technology in this department. And he said, okay, and went away for a while and came back and said, okay, well, we've just Googled you and we've just checked that is who you are. And according to the university website, this is what your title is, so we're going to go with that. Is that all right? I said, sure. Yeah. And he said, well, because we have to be very careful about how we present people when we talk about vaccination on this program. We have to confirm they are who they say they are, because we don't want to misrepresent the information. And I thought that was really impressive. Yeah.
That's good to know. That's good to know.
So, but then as part of the interview then, because they'd gone off and Googled me, one of the questions in the interview was, oh, you're being very critiqued all over the internet, aren't you? How much abuse do you get for what you do? So clearly they came across some stuff on Google that people were not saying nice things about me.
Oh, Rachie, I can't believe it's true.
All their flying monkeys.
That's right. Now, anybody who listened to Solar Flare would know all about the flying monkeys, of course, and we all battled the flying monkeys on Solar Flare. And if anybody listened to Solar Flare and didn't get the big hint who the flying monkeys are, they are basically the...
anti-vaccine zealots?
That's a good way to put it, I think, Dr. Rachie.
As the Sydney Morning Herald put it, right?
The Telegraph.
The Telegraph.
Yeah.
And by the way, thank you all for taking part in Solar Flare. In fact, the three of you here at this table, you did all your parts a bit later than everybody else, at all sort of different times, but it all came together quite well, I think. It was quite... I mean, Joe and Eran, we discovered you in a cave. And Dr. Rachie was constantly after noms.
I'm not like that in real life.
It's amazing, folks. We've been sitting here recording the Think Tank.
What made you choose that box?
The voice you hear above me is the announcement from upstairs. Somebody just won a car at our club. It's quite incredible.
It wasn't me.
It wasn't us.
The courtesy bus.
Yeah, I want to hear the courtesy bus again too, but somebody just won the courtesy bus. You want to win the courtesy bus?
Yeah.
Good heavens. Joe, you've got a quick thing to say to us about textbooks.
Okay, so I know people might have seen this in the media recently, but there's a textbook out there called Midwifery Preparation for Practice, and this textbook, as it turns out, is actually probably the if not one of the core textbooks for midwives in Australia and New Zealand, and I think probably also in some international courses as well. And what came to our attention is that there's a section in the textbook which talks about vaccinations and specifically talks about the role of the midwife in discussing vaccination with parents. And the language used is very concerning, but more than that, it actually refers students to the Australian Vaccination Network website as a source of information on vaccination. I won't read you out the whole section, but it talks about a midwife whose philosophy includes informed choice. It talks about, setting aside personal biases and so on. And it really just uses language that's very worrying. Now, I had a look actually, and this book, as I said, is used widely across every campus.
Well, it's a core text, isn't it?
It's a core text, and it's been used in. It's been out since 2007. It's now in its second edition, and that text actually is in both editions.
Wow.
Now, Jane Hansen actually brought this issue up as she wrote an article about this as part of the No Jab, No Play campaign as well. And she actually interviewed Professor Hannah Dalen, who's an executive member of the New South Wales branch of the Australian College of Midwives. And Hannah Dalen's response I found really quite concerning. She stated that a student would be smart enough to know that anything from the NHMRC and the Ministry of Health is usually based on evidence and has a public health interest, and she would quickly cotton on to the fact that there are some fairly radical views on the AVN site. Now, I'm sorry, but this textbook was written by a number of professors of midwifery, and as far as I'm concerned, these people should be modelling critical thinking to their students. If they were unable to recognise that they were referring their students to an anti-vaccination website, how do they expect their students to pick up on this?
This smacks of laziness, in a way.
Well, either something has seriously fallen down in their editing process, or, the person who wrote it maybe is sympathetic to these views. I don't know that. I can't assume anything, but I find the language very worrying.
And this is not the first time this has happened with midwives in New South Wales, because they previously sent an invitation to their entire membership to come to an AVN seminar, and it wasn't until they were alerted to the fact that it was anti-vaccination that they withdrew that invitation. So we don't know in that instance either if that was a mistake or if it was deliberate, if you like.
And in fact, one of the going back to the article, the survey that Merrill Dory's just released, there was, assuming it's true, one of the stories in there actually talks about a family who were very uncertain about vaccinating their children, and a midwife overheard them discussing their concerns and referred them on to the AVN.
Yeah, and there's just one more thing I want to add on that as well, because the AVN keeps going on about how really educated people are anti-vax, but in this survey there was nobody represented with more than a basic degree, and also any health professionals that identified were midwives, nurses or chiropractors or osteopaths. There were no doctors, which is what the AVN always says is, doctors don't vaccinate and they don't vaccinate their own children. There was no membership of traditional medicine on their survey.
And the other thing is that, as I understand it, that there was a feeling that these students should have access to both sides and blah blah blah. But
what was that big red flag that we were talking about earlier? It was
informed
choice. What a big red flag that is.
Well, I mean,
if we have, as we discussed, if they're going to teach the controversy, I suggest, since this is a midwifery course, they should talk about eugenics and voluntary euthanasia. I mean, they're all valid
I didn't
topics.
See those in the index.
Valid topics for midwives to discuss.
But it's different. There's a different thing in teaching it as a comparison and a critique, and to teach critical thinking than to just put it out there.
Well, I think it's one thing to the thing is, and this was actually the point I made to Jane Hansen, was that midwives have access to parents at an incredibly vulnerable point. This is a point where they need good information, and to be putting them in a position where they are going to be spreading this kind of misinformation. And the thing is, I know there are plenty of midwives out there who are incredibly supportive of vaccination, who are very pro-science, but we also know that there are quite a number out there who have some very strange views.
And maybe this is where it originates, Joe.
Well, who knows? We just don't know. And
the AVN are very heavily into promoting home birth, aren't they?
Yes,
they are. And I think the thing is that ultimately, if nursing and midwifery are the science-based professions that we claim to be, then there's no room for this other side. Either we are science-based or we're not.
Yeah.
So you can't have it both ways.
Again, we were discussing earlier, one of the things that I'm very pleased to see that all of us, especially you, Joe, and you Dr. Rachie, have been pushing and getting the media to change is this idea of false balance. It's wonderful.
I've been working on this for a really long time, and I just say it up front now to journos, I will not participate in this story if there's false balance involved. But, curiously, a friend of mine called me today because an article appeared in the paper and there was false balance, and he got so angry, he rang up the journalist who said, I don't even know what you're talking about. And he was able to educate this journalist about what it means. Now, the problem is that a lot of our specialist journalists have been fired now. We've had a lot of redundancies. There aren't health journalists working on these stories anymore. There are social commentators, there are political reporters. These people are not aware of what false balance is. So we have to educate our journalists. And
the more media know, the better.
And I think we've been incredibly successful at doing that.
One point I didn't make was that Gillian Skinner, the New South Wales Minister for Health, in response to this, has actually written to the relevant colleges requesting that the textbook be withdrawn. Now, I haven't actually heard what the result of that has been, but that's just one state in Australia. I think we need to see this done Australia-wide until this has been remedied. And I think that in the meantime, every faculty which is using this textbook should be notifying its student that there is a serious error and that,
What's the name of the textbook?
It's called Midwifery Preparation for Practice. And, as far as I know, it's actually won some publishing awards. It's a highly regarded textbook. And I've got no reason to think that the other information in the book is in any way of concern. But this is a big problem.
It certainly is. Well, that's the big issue at the moment, of course, and it's dominated this think tank, but we're going to change tact a little bit at the moment to wind things up as we sit here backstage, because we had to move because of the announcements over the public address system, which aren't bus announcements, they're a raffle. There's a giant raffle here at the club. Wind turbines.
Yeah, well, I thought, if we're talking about all the hot air coming from the AVN and we're talking about all kinds of quacks, I'll put them both together, hot air and quacks. So there is a growing I don't know whether to call it a controversy. It's a manufactured controversy around wind turbines, and there are people who advocate the suggestion that there is such a thing called wind turbine syndrome. Yeah. And as typical of many forms of quackery, wind turbines cause anything from autism to cancer.
I heard this.
I won't say too much about it because our readers of the Skeptic magazine will be able to find some articles about this.
www.skeptics.com.au.
I'm proud to have had a hand in putting this this thing together, but I've been in touch with several people regarding this story, and it's all very interesting. And just last weekend, there was an episode of ABC Radio National's Background Briefing about wind turbines, and they interviewed a person by Sarah Laurie, who's a former doctor, a former medical doctor. Her registration has lapsed, but she is one of the major proponents of this wind turbine syndrome. And just to listen to her, again, I haven't been really involved in all of this debate, so I really don't know all the details as much as we all know about the vaccines now. But listening to her, she sounded like a vaccine quack. Exactly the same. The context was different.
Yeah.
But the arguments were exactly the same.
This is like the anti-fluoride.
Absolutely,
quack.
It's the same thing. It's the same thing. It's like, first of all, their choice of poison, whatever it is, causes all the different ailments.
Right.
And then the evidence that they require is. It's not even flimsy. It's just not evidence, And then when the interviewer challenges her on the ethics of the information that she collects, because she actually does studies on people by collecting information about them and all that, and she also some studies involve the N equals 1, but she calls it a study.
No,
not a case study.
A study.
A study. And she, when challenged on it, she says, she's not fazed by it. As far as she's concerned, it's all for the good of whatever it is that she's promoting. Complete quackery. Yeah. It's absolutely astonishing, and I recommend everybody get the Skeptic magazine and read this. It's not actually one article; it's a series of articles. Coming edition of the Skeptic magazine, and it's all very interesting and new to me, but all new and old at the same time. New context, the same old tactics.
I again because of this. Goings on up in Queensland at the moment at Rockhampton and other, I think it's Rockhampton, Cairns and Rockhampton, taking fluoride out of the water because somebody went up there with a snappy PowerPoint presentation and gave the same sort of arguments we've heard from the anti-vaxxers. The poison, the conspiracy. Look at these results, blah blah blah. And of course, people are dazzled by it, the counsellors, and next thing you know, they're taking the fluoride out of the water.
Somewhere in America this week as well, where they were having the same problem also with people campaigning to take fluoride out of the water, and they were lobbying one of the governors. I can't remember which state it was in, but they got it through as well. It was the same thing, and it was partly also due to low voter turnout and people with a vested interest that they got it through as well.
Jo says to me with her dazzling teeth.
Oh, yes, thank you, fluoride. I'm paid by Big Fluoride.
I think you just started a meme.
So, in fact, it reminds me of another episode of Background Briefing that was just on recently talking about Lyme disease. And
actually, when you say that, you should say Lyme disease with scare quotes.
Lyme disease. with scare quotes. Of course, this is a podcast, I forget. Where, there's a number of doctors in Australia.
Actually, you should also do doctors with square quotes.
Who are claiming to have, tens and hundreds of patients with Lyme disease, and if people aren't aware, there's in America there are definite confirmed cases of this illness, but in Australia there is absolutely no evidence that this condition exists here. However, there are a lot of people who actually claim to have it, and it's become quite a sort of vocal group sort of pushing for this to be recognised as a diagnosis. So one of these doctors trotted off to an infectious diseases seminar recently and presented a poster with what were his two best case studies of that he felt supported his claim. And the journalist, who'd clearly done some good investigating, turned around and said to him, did you not think it was important and perhaps a conflict of interest to mention that one of the people in this case study is your brother?
And he said no.
No, absolutely not.
Oh, dearie me, from wind turbines to Lyme disease to fluoridization to the anti-vaccination crowd who are having a bit of a tough time right now. I want to thank you all for coming to this disjointed think tank.
Can I just say one thing, Richard,
of course,
before we sign off?
Before it's midnight?
Before it's midnight, yes. I just wanted to let everyone know, Friends of Science in Medicine are very busy. We've got a huge amount going on, and you can actually now follow us on Twitter. We have a Twitter account, Friends of SciMed, SCIMED, and we also have a Facebook page.
Why not FSM?
Take him.
Bloody spaghetti monster.
Stupid monster.
So please follow us. And the other thing that's really important to know is anyone can become a friend of FSM. Or a friend of SM. You don't have to be a medical professional. You don't have to have, medical credentials. We want any supporters out there who support our principles of, as we're called, science in medicine. So please go onto the website scienceinmedicine.org.au, and you can just send a letter and express your interest and come on board.
I can really recommend that. It's a fantastic endeavour. And I'm so pleased that you're part of it, Jo.
Thank you.
That's really excellent. Well, yes, from this disjointed think tank, because we had to move rooms because of the announcements outside, I want to thank Dr. Rachie.
Thank you.
And Joanne Benhamu.
Thank you, Richard.
And Eran Segev.
Thank you, Richard.
Who are all crew members on the Solar Flare, by the way, for taking part in this think tank. And until the next think tank, cheers, everybody.
Cheers.
Oh, Richard, just don't forget to mention the Solar Flare.
And listen to Solar Flare. I didn't even win a card tonight.
Jeg er Marit.
Og jeg er Kristin. Og vi vil tipse deg som norsk lytter av The Skeptic Zone om skeptikermiljøet i Norge.
Det finnes norske blogger og pubtreff og podcast, og foreningen Skepsis driver med ulike former for aktivisme.
Sentralt er skepsis.no, og her publiseres det dyptpløyende artikler, en kalender over skeptiske aktiviteter og lenker til andre skeptiske ressurser.
Skepsisbloggen oppdateres jevnlig, og det diskuteres heftig på Skepsisforumet, så stikk innom og delta du også.
Skepsis.no.
Hello, I'm Marit.
And I'm Kristin, and we want to let you know that there are lots of Norwegian skeptics for you to get to know.
There are blogs and pub meets and a podcast, and the Norwegian Skeptics also do paranormal tests and consumer activism.
To find out more, Google Norwegian Skeptics or visit skepsis.no.
Thank you for listening to the Skeptic Zone. Coming up on next week's show, Dr. Rachie on the radio. It's great when people like Dr. Rachie get interviewed by the mass media out there. And coming up on next week's show, a wonderful interview with our very own Dr. Rachie on ABC Radio. And apart from that, well, who knows? Who knows? Who can see into the future? I ask you. I ask you because I'm going to roll my D20, my 20-sided dice, one more time. Are you ready? Those people who guessed 11, what am I talking about? Who mystically saw 11 at the top of the show, and everybody else, let's see how you go this time. Are you thinking of a number? Here we go. You're not going to believe this, folks. It's true. 11. I kid you not. I'm looking at it now. One more. This is number 3. Let's have another go. Are you thinking of another number? Right, I'm going to make sure that's really... Okay, here we go. 7. While you ponder those mysterious numbers, 11, 11, 7, there's got to be a cosmic connection there somewhere. I'll say, this is Richard Saunders, signing off from Sydney, Australia. 18.
You've been listening to The Skeptic Zone. Visit our website at www.skepticzone.tv for comments, contacts, and extra video reports.